we're checking for damage. So we're looking at the front and the back of the shirt. And sometimes you can see if there's like a seam didn't get sewn all the way, mark that down on the invoice, write down like small one damaged. Sometimes it's ink damage and it's not ink that's in the graphic. Something happened and it's just in a random place on the shirt. Mark that down too and take pictures because sometimes the vendors like to see what the damage is. And I mean, I typically always send them the image instead of just explaining it like, hey, this is what's on here. We've had it on 5 shirts. So they want to know these things. So then once I've gone through, we've checked off all the sizes, we've checked for damage, written any notes on that slip, I will sign it and date it so that I know when that box was done. And then it goes into another folder that says checked in, because at that point, I'll collect those packing slips and attach it to my invoice. So when I'm looking, because lots of times your packing slips don't have your prices on there. So when you're going in and putting your purchase orders in, you're seeing if there's any damage that you need to contact the vendor on. And if they're going to take them back, you're going to alter that invoice to reflect that price difference. Or sometimes they'll just say, will you keep it? And we'll give you whatever discount and you can sell it at discount. So then it goes to your sales rack for those items. And then it's ready to enter into Square. So any questions on any of that so far?
I have a question. Tammy, what do you do if a box doesn't have a packing slip? Most boxes do, but some vendors don't use packing slips. What do you do?
I just created an Excel, or I think it might be on Word, a document that just has a bunch of lines and it's just says product check-in at top. And so then and vendor name and date. So then we'll fill in the vendor, the date, and start listing out what was in that box by size. And then they can make any notes on that paper too. If you don't have that, we've even just used plain paper just to get that information written on it. Because when especially if you have somebody else checking in that box for you, you don't know what's happening with that product. So more notes is always better than no notes. Because then when you go into Square, you know what's happening. So if there's damaged or anything's right or the color was wrong, you've got that information and you know who checked it in. So if you have any other random questions that come up, you can go back and ask that person, hey, when this happened or when you check this in, did you notice anything or why'd you write this? So that does happen. And I would say writing a vendor's name on there sometimes can be confusing, especially coming from Halo, because they use so many different vendors for the product. It comes in and they'll just write down Gildan because that's what's on the shirt. So that's where having them write kind of what the graphic looks like and the color of the shirt can help you match it to the invoice.
Tammy, this is like a very specific question, but I feel like I've been trying to figure out like wording for those folders because I also have like folders. Like what can you repeat what yours say? Like you have a check-in one.
Yeah, so I have a folder that holds just blank check-in pages. So that's where if there is no packing slip, they can just grab that piece of paper and start writing on it. And then I have a folder for lots of times I'll print off the invoices ahead of time too. So then I'll put those in there so then they can start figuring out where some of them are and attaching it. And then there's a checked in folder that they'll put it in. And so I know I can grab right out of that and go in and start getting my purchase orders all entered into the system.
I love that you mentioned that because this is where your personality and your organizational style. I love Tammy's system with folders. To me, that's very appealing. Some of the other retail managers, I've seen them do like those. I've got one right here, like these clips, and they've got, labels on them and it's like completed packing slip, and they're grouped together, bunched like this. I also remember one retail manager had a whole page of yellow stickers that she made on the computer. And on the sticker, it had different codes like packing slip, invoice, in square, paid. And so she'd take those off, stick them on an invoice, and that was how she tracked. But what Tammy's describing is some type of tracking system is needed. Don't make it burdensome to you, because I would hope, back to the manager mentality, that you're not checking in boxes. This is a delegation task. So you have to be able to take something and have it go into you, out to someone else, come back to you, and kind of keep track. Well, not kind of, you're keeping track of it along the way, so that at the end of the process, is it in square and has it been paid? So there's some flexibility, but I love Tammy's approach. It's really clean.
And it goes beyond that. I mean, I kind of have way too many systems, but so they definitely know the boxes on the wall. So it's just the like the 3 file things you can get at IKEA, those metal things, and it just hangs outside the office, and they know to put things right where it goes. So it's all explained. It's labeled on the outside too, along with the folders being labeled. And then from there, once I input it, I have stamps that say entered, that I'll stamp it, I'll write the date. And then I also have paid stamp as well, because sometimes there's a lag in when it gets entered in and where it gets paid. And then from there, I have one of those accordion files alphabetically. They go into that, and I keep that the rest of the year, because there's sometimes you need to go back and just reference. And it's easier to find a printed invoice than it is to go into Concur and find it, because you may not remember what month you paid it, where I'll pay something in July, but it arrived in May. So, and at the end of inventory, if there's any questions, you can easily kind of go back and look through some things, because then you've got dates written on it too, if you want to do that. And when I put it in the accordion, they all stand up until they have been entered and paid. And then once all of that happens, they go completely into the folder.
What's your stamp? You have 2 stamps, like are we talking like a ching stamp? Yes. Okay. So paid.
Oh, paid and entered. I'm not seeing my paid stamp. Oh, here it is.
Okay. Got it. Oh, those are cool. And you just had those made from somebody?
Amazon.
Okay.
Probably Amazon. I mean, I didn't do anything specific. You can probably even find some of these at your local Staples or Office Depot. So yeah, these weren't specifically made. I just Googled them and found them.
Nice.
And I know some people even go beyond that and have spreadsheets that things are listing out, so when they can reconcile, which I think Lacey had that. So MC, you've got some good stuff there. So if you guys are interested in any other, like beyond that, reach out. I've got access to those spreadsheets. So does MC, but I definitely have some crazy spreadsheets that have gone on.
Awesome. All right. Are we ready to move on to pricing?
Yeah, unless there's any questions.
Tammy, do you just, I like that accordion. I'm a very tangible person, so I like having things in hand, and so that appeals to me. But do you alphabetically, do you do it by vendor or?
I do.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Some of them get really full, like your B's and C's, but it's all right there. I tend to keep 2 of them. I'll keep last year's, and then once this year's will replace last year's, and then I'll just trash those. So I kind of keep them on hand for a year and a half.
Again, I don't know if my phone is just really overexposed, but if you Google accordion bookkeeping file organizer, you'll see one. Oh, there it is. And I too used that and did the same thing with keeping invoices. And I kept everything for a fiscal year in one file. I kept the last year like she did, and then I threw that away. But everything in that folder, A through Z, was for that fiscal year.
Yeah, you can find those on Amazon. don't get sticker shocked, because sometimes they're not like $50, but they can be up to 20 or so.
Yeah, this one's 14. So quick Google. All right, well, let's move on to pricing. And thanks, MC, you kind of queued this one up already for us. So in day one, we talked about profit margins, how we get to certain metrics and standards. And this pricing structure and strategy supports that. So the first one is merchandise purchased through group buys and contracts on clothing is marked up 125%. In order to do the math, you're going to use a 2.25 multiple and round up to 99 cents. Now, does anyone have their cell phone close by? Grab your cell phone and pull up your calculator, and let's do a little bit of math together. So if something you buy from a vendor is $5, how much would it be retail?
$11.99.
Perfect, because if you use your 2.25 multiple, you'd get to 11.25, and then you'd round up to 11.99. Awesome. All right, merchandise that's under $50 cost is marked up 100%. This is called keystoning, and this is the most traditional retail pricing strategy. This is often for gift items that are non-group buys, and you're going to use a 2.0 multiple in doing that, and then again round up to 99 cents. So again, let's say something is $6. What is going to be your retail price?
$12.99.
$12.99. Now here's one thing that you've got a little bit of flexibility. Because it comes up even, you could price that at $11.99. Often with gift items, the shipping is so much higher. So this is where I tend to look at, can I get the next up to $12.99? So this is where there's a little subjectivity here. Usually for me, it's based on the shipping involved. Anything
Right.
glassware is expensive. Tammy.
And I would add like that $50 mark. Yes, it can be gift items, but also sometimes some camps can order in clothing or jacket items that hit that $50 mark. So it can encompass multiple items.
Indeed. All right, so let's go for those expensive items. Number 4, merchandise that cost $50 or over, we mark up 80%. And that's using a 1.8 multiple and then round up to 99. So let's do a little bit of math again. Let's say you've got a product for $61. What's going to be your retail price? $61. You're going to multiply it by 1.8.
$109.99.
There you go. There you go. So if I just did 1.8, it comes out to 109.8 and then round up to the closest 99. This, to Tammy's point, this is often for outerwear, especially in Colorado where you tend to get some more technical, sometimes some name brand things. That's usually where you hit that higher price point. We don't tend to carry a lot of things in this price range. These are small number of items, but it does happen. All right, convenience items is marked up 30%. So you're going to use a 1.3 multiple and round up to 99. Let me just say, this is where you go to the dollar store. This is where I think most people have found the most success. This is truly a convenience item for our customers. So we're not looking to make a full turn. This is really more about service. And I love that Beth mentioned this. I forgot to mention it. Is sundry items we do not take staff discount off of. And I forgot to mention that on Monday. So might be a little add on there. So if something is $2.25, for example, you're going to round that up, do the math, and it should be $2.99. So again, 1.3 multiple. Number 6, jewelry items. Now, jewelry has a bigger margin, so we mark up to keystone or more. So you might want to underline or more. It's based on market value and perceived value. So we use a 2.25 to up to a 3 multiple, rounding up to 99 cents. You know, there's oftentimes we get some incredible buys on jewelry items, especially if we do group ordering. And so sometimes we look at it and say, the market really feels like I could go all the way up to 3 on this. This is where there's a little bit of an art and a science to pricing. So look at what you think the perceived value is after you run the multiple of 2.25 and go, can I take it to the next level? Something that I bought for $3, I can often sell for $9.99. I'm thinking of those lucky feather necklaces that we get for $3 and $4. Easily sell them for $9.99, $10.99. All right, now books, we use the standard suggested retail price. If you order from Ingram or Spring Arbor, the price tags are usually already formulated for us, and that's typically 40%. And then finally, there's a little chart there that just shows them all matched together. I would just print that off and keep that by your register, or not your register, your back office computer until it's just automatic for you. All right, I'm going to pause and see if there's questions about that, whether it's why we do it or how we do it. Questions? All right, it's pretty mathematical.
We have one question, Kathleen, also pretty small. For books that I can't find on Spring Arbor, like they're just either out of stock, where can I know there's like Christian distributor or the book distributors. Is there another like option?
Tell me what book you're looking for that's out of stock.
I thought I had the book list and I do. It's right. So one that I couldn't find on there was Creative Moments of Grace is on the required books.
Oh, that's a new ad. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And it wasn't on Amazon, not Amazon, Spring Arbor.
I couldn't find it.
Okay.
Did you look at Amazon?
I haven't.
Yeah, sometimes, amazingly, they have you can get some good prices on books. I wouldn't say that it's going to be near Spring Arbor / Ingram, but if you're just trying to locate that book. The other thing is you can always contact Spring Arbor and talk with the customer service there and ask about that specific title, because sometimes they might be having it come in and it may not just be listed, or yeah, they just know some random things that's not going to be on the website.
And I did Google, it is on Amazon right now. And I would also say it is very uncommon for us to put something on the required list that you can't get from Spring Arbor. So that's a good one for me to follow up on, because if we're going to put it on there, it needs to be easy. But Christian book distributors, Amazon, and Spring Arbor are the 3 places I would go.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I may have missed this, but do hats fall under like the garment 2.25 or the gift 2.0?
Yeah, because we do so many hats through group purchasing, it would be 2.25.
Okay.
If you're doing a hat on your own and you have to go and take it to 2.0, that's fine.
Okay. So I can kind of choose based on what I think it should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, hats are one of those things we do get great pricing because we group order. So we should be able to fall into that 2.25. Again, art and science, you know, if you overprice it, your customers will let you know and you will be putting it on sale. So speaking of putting things on sale, let's talk about that. That's our next topic. Why do we mark things down? Well, it's to strategically move inventory based on demand, and to adjust inventory. So these are some of the reasons why we have to put things on sale. The first one is to increase the movement. So for example, summer merchandise quantities, what you need to have on hand in the summer is not what you need to have on hand in the school season. So sometimes we need to adjust our inventory levels because our customers, the volume of customers have changed. Number 2 is to correct a buying error. An example here is a misprint from a vendor, an unexpected quality control on the garment. The first example I can think of is those watches, Tammy, that we got a couple years ago. They just kept breaking. And so we just needed to sell through what we had because they just didn't have long durability. So we got a discount from the vendor. We put them, I believe, at cost, and then we sold them. We got rid of them. The next one is to respond to market demands. So gibbets, we're talking about gibbets right now. Gibbets are not new to the market. We've been in that space before. When that trend died down, we needed to get rid of them. And so we put things on sale. Now they're coming back, which happens. So yes, to respond to market changes and interests. I swear, if Justin Bieber wears a bucket hat, we're all going to be carrying bucket hats. But if he stops or he gets under cancel culture, and then all of a sudden we're stuck with bucket hats. So we have to sometimes watch what the culture is doing around us. The next is to calibrate inventory between a new season. I mentioned if your guest groups or your season is changing, you need to bring down your inventory. Number 5 is tired inventory. So just like in our kitchen, things can get stale, inventory can get stale. And so inventory that has not been reordered or not been sold for 2 summers, we defined as stale. Now, sometimes things can go stale fast. You can bring in something and it doesn't sell at all, and you thought it was going to be great. That would be considered fast tired inventory. So it went south on you fast. So when you see that it needs to go, put it on sale and move it. There's no value in holding on to something for a long time. And I'm actually, before I go to the next point, let me just reiterate. On number 2, when I talk about buying errors, every single one of you, along with every single retail manager, will make a buying error. It is not about perfection. Buying is projections. So you're really trying to guess what your customers are going to want. So that is not a space of perfection. So yes, putting things on sale is not a waving of the flag. I screwed up. I made a mistake. Yes, you will make mistakes, but the markdown is how we respond to those. So just an encouragement. We all have dogs in our lineup that we thought were going to be awesome. It just happens. Okay, but going on to number 7, if after 2 weeks of selling in the summer camp season or 2 guest groups in the school season, and your movement of that item has not improved, then you want to mark it down. So typically we start markdown at 20%. If you've moved, then it needs to go to 40%. So a couple strategies. If that shirt hanging in that spot is not moving for you, move it to a different spot. See if it just needed a different environment. Maybe it'll get inspired by the other shirts it's around. If you've moved it twice, then mark it down 20%. If you've done that and it's been 2 weeks or 2 camp weeks or 2 weekends, go to 40%. Then if an item is in your inventory after 6 months, it can be marked down to cost. And there are times when you're going to mark it, I call it the price to make it walk. Whatever it will take to make it walk out the door, there are things that get to that point. When I was the retail manager at Saranac, I opened a closet that hadn't been opened in probably 5 years one day. And I found 1,000 silicone wristbands, 1,000 of them. So, and silicone wristbands at that point were not popular. So the price to make it walk out the door was $0.25. And so that's what we did. And so, sometimes you just got to get to that point. Hopefully none of you are walking to scenarios like that, but that was a little more common about 10 years ago. Inventory, you just hid it somewhere so you didn't have to see it anymore. That's not good business, so don't do that. All right, number 9 is damaged goods that cannot be returned to the vendor for credit. Consider using a greater discount than 20%. This is for damaged, like those watch examples. So if something here's a great example. You get a t-shirt in and it does have a stain. Mark the stain, like just use masking tape to say hole or stain. Put it on your sale rack. Hopefully you've gotten a full credit from your vendor so you can sell it at cost, or depending on the damage, you can put it on the sale rack for 20% off. It's full price in the front of your store, but it's showing up on your sale rack with damage for 20%. Kind of just depends on where the damage is.
I would say you could also mark on the hang tag as well, because sometimes they're not going to see that piece of tape. I mean, I know I miss it all the time when they mark it. And that's the other thing, when you receive product, they'll have masking tape and they will put a piece of tape where that damage is, and that damaged product goes into a bin. I forgot that. I apologize. So then I can go through that with the invoices and I know exactly what's going on with that garment.
Great point. All right, questions about markdowns. All right, so basically move
I have
it
a question.
20%.
Okay.
Okay,
So sorry, it's lagged. With the idea of waiting for 2 weeks in the summer camp season before marking something down, do we have to, I don't know, take that with a grain of salt with 5-day camping?
well, with 5-day camping, you've got a really fast opportunity to see if it was just that group. If it was just an anomaly, that group just didn't like that shirt. So again, this is a little bit variable. If you feel like, you get a good sense for it. If it's moved around and you in that second or that first week you've moved it and it didn't still sell at all, I'd probably go right to the 20% off. Some of it can be a little bit of, is your summer shorter? And some of us have shorter summers, so your runway to sell things are shorter. I'd be a little more aggressive. If you're at middle of the summer and you brought something in new and it's not selling at all and you have 4 weeks left of summer, I'd be a little more aggressive. So again, sometimes it's looking at the individual item. Sometimes it's looking at all of your inventory. Like if that's slow seller and you're really size broken on all your other top sellers, you kind of want a good, stable, full size run t-shirt. So I'd put it right in front and put a big fun sign on it and really try and move it, because I don't really have a lot of other things in my lineup. So I've given you some good science and math, but again, there's an art to it. Sometimes you have to look at the individual items. Sometimes you have to look at your whole lineup and what you're offering to your guest. It's funny. I mean, Tammy can attest to this. Something that didn't sell, like one shirt, not one, and I moved it. The next week it was super popular because a different mix of kids from different part of the country came in and they really responded to it. So I got confused. Or something sold incredible. This happened to me. Incredible 1 week. And so I immediately reordered it with the vendor, and then it didn't sell again the rest of the summer. It just happens. So again, customers can be fickle and it's hard to hit some traction on some things. So there's a little bit of an art to this.
I would just add that yes, watch things as Kathleen has given you these tips and tricks and science to look at. But if you feel it needs to go on sale, put it on sale. Don't hold back, because you're then just sitting on that inventory where you have summer and you could have moved it a little bit faster. So don't feel that it has to stay at that price point, because I know Kathleen and I have coached people, and we've found product that has been sitting there for years and it's never gone on sale. And why keep it then? So at that point, it's, put it at a price and get it out. And honestly, sometimes I've just marked things out, small quantities of it, because it's just been sitting there and it hasn't sold. And we've moved it, we've put it on sale, we've put it in a display, still nothing. So again, if you have questions, ask your coach about it, but just don't feel like you can't put something on sale.
Good word.
So I just have a quick clarification, I guess. I feel like before this training, I was thinking only put things on sale if you really feel like they really need to go on sale. But it almost sounds like putting things on sale and marking them down is like a fluid, you're going to be actively doing that throughout the summer, and it's okay to put things on sale like maybe a little bit more regular than I thought.
Yeah,
Is that right?
it needs to be part of your inventory management strategy. It's not a, oops, I made a mistake.
Okay.
In fact, in the Monday retail update, I gave a great example of what happens when a shirt becomes size broken. And are you reordering it? And you've kind of got to hold on to that size broken t-shirt for a week. Do you put it on sale? No, you should probably just, depending on how size broken it, take as much out onto the floor and give it a spot until the new shirts come in. But then let's say you're not going to reorder it and it's size broken. I think I'd move it to the sale rack and put it on sale for 20%. It's size broken. I'm not reordering it, and I'm making space for what I hope is a more accelerated seller. So sometimes, again, it's about inventory movement, and sometimes the inventory gets staled or flat out spoiled and it just needs to go on sale. Lost Canyon, when they had a shirt that was size broken, they put it by the register and had a sign that said last chance, and it wasn't on sale. I mean, she didn't, she was getting great movement out of it, and she opened up a spot for a strong seller. That's a great strategy too. I hadn't thought of not putting it on sale.
Yeah, neither had I, and that it's amazing. So like the rack behind MC, that's all that they have is one of those rolling racks out by the register. And they keep some of the sizes in the back, but they only put 2 to 3 of that size of that garment out there, and it's broken size runs. And as it sells, they're restocking it like you would the regular, all the other waterfalls in the store. But people are responding to that. I mean, it's just that mentality. Just think of when we walk into a store, when we see something like that, of course we're beelining it for it to be like, oh, what's on here? What am I not going to be able to find someplace else? And ultimately that is about our stores because we are very specific. So I thought it was great. I'm definitely going to try to implement that at the ranch to move stuff and still get the revenue for it that we're keeping it as.
Good question. So again, Sam, this is about inventory movement, and it's a strategy. I had one last thought and it ran away, but that's okay. To keep on track timing wise, Tammy, I'll let you talk about damage.
Yeah. So I talked a little bit about it as we're checking things in, but damage happens at any point in time in the store. I mean, sometimes a guest will break something. It's unintentional, and that's fine. I mean, we don't hold them accountable for it. So if an item is broken or like the watches aren't working, I keep a bin. So I highly recommend that you keep a bin someplace and you have it marked damaged in the back. So you've got your damaged items that are going in there. You want to be regularly going through them. And if it's sellable, mark it down and get it out to your sale section. And if it's completely broken, if it's one of those that we could contact the vendor on, we want to contact the vendor to see about a credit. And that's very specific on the vendors for damaged items. So if you received a whole shipment or part of a shipment from like Camelback or Hydro Flask, and there's just something wrong with a bunch of them, contact them because it's defective. It's not something that we did. It's something from their end. Don't feel like you cannot contact a vendor to ask them any questions. Please do. We work with a lot of these vendors already, so they're used to receiving emails and phone calls from us. So some of the vendors at the end of the year, we are able to, hey, these things were damaged or something is just not going right with them, contact them. John Sitco, there's lots of things that can go on with that. We can get credit back for them. But again, it's just reaching out and asking those questions and they'll let you know. Or check in with Beth and Kathleen if you're just seeing something going weird on some of the stuff that's coming in. They may already know about some of it or can easily help you reach out, or they will reach out to the vendor too and see, because then if something's going on at one camp, it's probably happening at others with some of the stuff that's coming in. And as Kathleen talked about some of the other things that come in damaged wise, misprints, I would just say, make sure you read all of, like, you're looking at your lettering, the wording from your art approvals. I had a shirt, I forgot the I in family one year. I don't do that again. I sit there and kind of count out and make sure that everything is there. It was one of those funky graphics that you really couldn't tell, but boy, when somebody pointed that out, it just kind of smacks you in the face every time you look at it again. So those things happen and it's part of life. Don't beat yourself up about it. You just figure out how to fix the problem. I put stuff on sale. And I think I let that one ride. And it's like, if somebody noticed it, sure, I'll give you a discount. If not, I just sold it. And then for damaged as well, if you're noticing things, contact the vendors and check your emails. If you've got shortage in numbers coming in on your packing slips and versus the product, check in with them. Check in to make sure that the graphic, if something's wrong, that's what you approve. I got a graphic one year. I approved the graphic, but then they printed a completely wrong name on it. So that's an automatic ship back. They'll send you a call tag for it. We don't have to pay for the shipping back. So just make sure you ask them for that call tag so that the box will get back to them. Sometimes they'll ask you, hey, will you keep this if we discount? That's completely up to you. Wrong name, definitely not do that. But it's up to you if your store can handle that product, because at that point you can put it on sale and still make revenue on it, just depending on the prices. And sometimes it's definitely worth shipping back and keeping it. Yeah, so then I think that covers like the mistakes I've seen, mistakes I've made. Sometimes Lake shirts is a good one to talk about because they dye their own clothing. So sometimes the dyes are off. And then when you go and get your new shipment, you hang it up there and you're like, oh, this is like way lighter than the other. If that's a concern, reach out to the vendor and just talk to them about that. Or they sometimes will send you the wrong color. And again, that comes down to, do you want to have the same shirt with 2 different color variations on your floor?
And I'm going to add one clarifier. If the product arrives to you damaged and it hasn't been entered into Square, you're going to adjust that in the purchase order by, you might have ordered 12, but you're only putting 11 in. But if something has been received via purchase order and is existing as an asset in Square and it shows up damaged, just the cost of doing business, you do have to take it out of Square by damaging it out, because you need to attest that it's left the building, it's left your inventory. So there's 2 houses, so make sure that you've done the Square process that it shows there. And if you go under stock, then there's stock action, and then you choose damage. It's mapped out there, but there's also your bookkeeper needs to do something to take it out of Lawson. So just know, love the damage bin. I actually had a little notebook next to my damage or in my damage bin, so that when someone put something in there, they'd write what it was. So I'd pull it out and go, what's wrong with this? It was just a little cheater sheet for me. But there is a great opportunity to give them away or do something, but make sure they get out of Square if they've gone into Square. If they haven't gone in, you've handled that with the purchase order.
And I would also say that sometimes with your purchase orders, Be Unlimited is a great example of this. They purchase on their end extra shirts as they're printing ours. So sometimes you'll order 10 mediums and you'll end up getting 11 or 12. They're pretty much gifting us those extra 2 shirts. So you want to adjust your purchase order price to match that for that size. The retail cost is still going to be the same, but your purchase order, so you want your PO to match what it should be. So they won't add that number onto the packing slip. It just shows up.
Great
So
example.
you had said but it's got to get out of Lawson, like that amount. So do you just like at the end of the month or frequently like just email your bookkeeper a list of those items? Okay.
No, I just say pull the damaged report from Square. They have access to that. So they should be looking at that monthly.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then they'll do that. And the great thing now that we have one category in the store, it's just hitting that one line item before we had to list it out for them.
Awesome. Okay, great.
And MC, just go to your workflows. The screenshot is there in the corner. It shows you what you do and it shows what the bookkeeper does. Because there's a lot of new of you, there are also a lot of new bookkeepers. So I would not assume that your bookkeeper knows how to do all these things, because the work they do affects your metrics. So I would work in a partnership with your bookkeeper. It's okay to say, hey, are you doing the damage report? Hey, are you, in fact, the Monday retail update kind of said, meet with your bookkeeper and make sure they're doing these logs with you. I'll probably keep talking about that in the next retail update as well. But it's really a partnership. The work they do rolls downhill and affects your metrics. So it's always good to double check.
Yeah. And my bookkeeper has been our bookkeeper for years. So I still will just shoot her an email saying, hey, I have damaged out this month.
Yep.
But that's pretty much all I say. But again, it's build that relationship with them. There's so much that they are intertwined into our business. So it helps.
All right. Well, I'm going to check in with our last topic. I'm looking at the clock. Would everyone be good to go 5 minutes over, or does anyone have a hard stop? We're good. Okay, good. That takes a little pressure off. Okay, the next thing is inventory levels. So we've talked about pricing and how we get revenue. We've talked about how we move inventory if there's mistakes with markdowns. But let's talk about overall your strategy around inventory. Now, as I look at all of you, each of you have a different approach, but there is some commonality. So this is very much an equation, and it's not mathematical, but there's components here. You look at the size of your season, you look at the size of your guest group, the number of people coming, and how much inventory do I need to support that. Then you look at your school season and you do the same question. How many weekends? How big are those weekends? And then I would add one more thing. How many of them are Young Life? Obviously, we make more sales if it's a Young Life weekend, but if you're a camp that has a lot of non-Young Life school season, that impacts that. So what I typically look at, like at Saranac, I'll use Saranac as an example. My inventory level would be the highest in April, and I would bump up my inventory to 70 to 85,000 consistently. I knew that I had to do it that high. I had 300 campers and I had 11 weeks of summer. So I knew by week about how much inventory I needed to sell. And so I would do reorders in June and until June 15th. And I would do no reorders after June 15th. And then I would move my inventory and adjust it down to 30,000 by September. I had a very short, it just went right till November for school season. And my goal was to get down to 25,000 at the end of school season, because then we were shut again until June 1st. Now, that was the rhythm for Saranac. You get to figure out your rhythm, but typically, like I'm looking at like MC, that's not going to be your story. You're going to need to I'm going to make up some numbers. You're probably going to stay a lot more stable. You're not going to see a spike, but you could look back on the dashboard to see how high the inventory got in April, because that's when we have a normal delivery. See where your inventory level hit in September and leveled off for school season. If you have strong school season, I'm thinking too of you, Sam, you probably want to keep somewhere between 40 and 50,000 for really consistent Young Life school season. Angela, for you, you're mostly wildlife, but your school season is pretty solid and long. So you might want to hover more around 40,000 in your school season, but you can look at a lot of different, dashboard is a great thing. I like to track my inventory weekly, because I have to tell you, there's going to be a moment when you're going to walk into the store and you're going to feel the inventory level. Like you're going to have a moment like, I need to place orders. I had a day off and I need to get going, because you can just sense that you need to get things going. But until that happens, I would run that projected profit report that Beth showed you every single week, and do it every single week for a while. Then you are seeing where your inventory is moving. And when you start to see that number drop, you're going to need to, if you're in the summer, you're going to want to place orders. I, for example, place orders every Monday. With 5-day camping, you might look twice a week, especially this summer when you're just not sure how quick your turns are going to be. But at least make a scheduled appointment with yourself 1 day a week to place reorders. If you've got solid Young Life business coming in all summer. In fact, does everybody have at least 7 weeks of summer coming in? Yeah. Okay. So you're going to need to place some quick reorders fast in the beginning to get product moving to you. But then probably by July 15th, you're going to want to phase out reorders unless you've got really strong school season business. Now, I've just given you some guidance, but let me just reinforce this is very subjective and you're going to learn this. And COVID has made it 10 times more complicated because we've run very consistent rhythms for 20 years. And now we're in this weird season. We're doing this juggling. Most of you have way too much inventory, most of you, that need to be recalibrated. But once it starts to stabilize, this will be a lot more, effective guidance for you. Okay, I'm going to pause. Please ask me questions because that's a lot of touchy-feely, but.
So since Square has been new in the past year, is that history? Like, because I know that, okay.
No history in Square. So here's where this gets a little weird, but somewhere in your store, hopefully there's a desktop computer that's still got RMS on it. You can run it there. But I would go to your dashboard. Your dashboard has inventory from the last few years captured in it. And that would be the best record until Square becomes more of a, informed tool. Great point. It's not. But it definitely will tell you where you are today. And it's going into the summer, it's still where I would look to see where's my inventory, where's my inventory, where's my inventory.
Are there examples of how other retail managers have tracked inventory? And I know it would be up to personal preference, but I would love to get some examples or tips and tricks if that's a spreadsheet or if that's a piece of paper, just any ideas like that.
Yeah, well, here's what's tricky. In RMS, which is what we used to run an item value list every single month and keep a printed copy. So somewhere in the Frontier store, there might be a notebook with every month's inventory levels in it. So you could look there. But I would sit with Pam on this and get some coaching. I feel like your business model is changing at Frontier. So being more seasonal, you probably need some different strategies as far as your inventory levels. So Annie, for example, you'll have how many weeks this summer?
12.
Okay, and then what's your school season look like?
Oh, we are figuring that out right now.
Okay, so let's say you don't have if you go seasonal, let's say you don't have any groups past November.
Mhm.
Let's say you take it all the way through Thanksgiving and then there's nothing else planned until the next summer. So in that mindset, I would probably say you'd want to get your inventory more online between 70 and 80,000 through the summer. But by July 15th, you're going to want to start to calibrate that down so that by school season, when you take inventory in September, you're probably more at 40. And then by the last weekend, you want to get it as low as you can because you're closing for the summer or for the season. You can make inventory lower through some creative ways. You can take some display pieces out. You can make the space look different. You can close certain spaces off. In fact, when I was last there, I suggested to Courtney to put a barn door over that one cutout space. You know which one I'm talking about with the glass windows. Put a barn door over it and slide it shut and make your store physically get smaller in the school season so that you don't need to fill it with as much inventory. That's a way to do that. With Timberwolf, for example, you have a huge space, but not every space needs to have cascades jam-packed. You can make it more shoppable, and the traffic areas get bigger. Empty shelves make a customer think you're going out of business, but you can fill that with props, for example. I can't think of any props right now, but something fun and cute that you're not selling, but it fills space and it's on theme. So there are ways to shrink your space to make it work. Now, that's not everyone here on the call has a little different strategy involved, but know that your inventory needs to expand and contract based on your customers and who's coming. Okay, other questions about that? This is a great thing to talk to your coach about. Truly. All right. Well, I want you to pause for a moment and go look through your notes, and I want you to choose one thing that you feel was a big takeaway from the call today, and I'd like us each to share. And then I'll give you a list of topics that we didn't cover so that you know there are some more information out there, and then we'll wrap up. So we'll probably go about 5 minutes over. Oh, hello, Evelyn. All right. Sutton, we'll start with you because you've got the cutest screen ever. Look at the face. Okay.
You just got from her little nap.
Oh man, I wish I looked that great getting up from a nap. So why don't you start? Share one thing from your notes today that was either new or a great reminder.
Yeah, I loved the conversation about markups because I had always heard the 2.25 and I kind of just assumed that was for everything. And then I realized, gosh, some of this stuff is expensive, but just having the freedom to do like the 1.8 for items over $50, like things like that makes it a lot more realistic and like, oh, that makes sense. So that was helpful for me.
Great. And let me just add, Sutton, your business model is a little different. So again, some of the things we've talked about here, you might, as you grow in your expertise, find that your mix of products needs to be more expensive. You might need to carry more expensive items. And so just know that all of this is really kind of in the main line, and you might have to tweak some of these things. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I was like looking at convenience items and I'm like, cool, so $3.99 for 1 ounce of shampoo. That's crazy. But now the 1.3 makes total sense. Yeah.
Good. Good. All right, MC, and then Frontier, and Sam and Angela. We'll go in that order.
I think for me, it's all of these like detailed processes of like checking in inventory. It's like I can check in inventory, but now that there's like this financial side of it, I just don't want to like lose track of that because especially like I know we're about to get a ton of stuff in and I do not want to get like lost in all of that. And so I want to make sure it's like, okay, this is it's in Square, we've paid for it, it's in Concur. Like, so I think those are things that was really good to hear. And I'm about to go find paid and entered stamps and relabel those folders like literally at 11:35. So that's what I'm about to do today. And then yeah, I think, and even like the last chance rack, I'm like, that is so easy. Like we could do that. Like I don't have to do that now. I could do that like in the summer whenever I have 15 minutes and be like, great, we're going to be able to just throw this up and see how it does. And so that's kind of exciting to think through some of those things.
Love it. And your last chance rack might best serve you in the school season when there's traffic flow. There are times in our stores where it is body to body. We don't like that environment. It's high theft, but just know sometimes you have to play out your traffic and who's in your store. But great, you've made my day. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Sam, or I'm sorry, Frontier. I jumped over you guys.
I think for me, just being inspired to have better established systems for checking in for damaged goods, things that BTAT and I feel comfortable doing so that we have a set system before interns arrive in a week. So I feel similar to MC of just wanting to create those and have a checklist for interns that are coming So I have to learn it first before I teach them.
Well, I think with your administrative background, you're going to have some fancy systems. I can't wait to hear what they are. But I would encourage you guys with Brandon and you and Gracie and your interns, defining some lanes of traffic of who's doing what, because there is a lot to do. But you, for example, shouldn't be a cashier and shouldn't be checking in boxes. So great to have those systems for them, but make sure you've got other people invited in. All right, Sam, you're up.
I think for me, the idea of like managing inventory and how that kind of goes like this throughout the year today gave me a little bit more like running projected profit reports. That's like a way more tangible way of like, okay, I know inventory is important and now I know ways that I can actually watch it. And so I'm excited to put some of those things into practice and learn how to actively be aware of inventory as it starts moving, because it hasn't started moving yet.
Awesome. It's like a dial that gets turned. And whenever time I would have a day off, the first thing I did when I would sit down at my desk, because I'd run in the old days, item value list, today, projected profit, I'd wanted to see what our inventory, how it moved when I was gone. So good word. All right, Angela, close us up.
I feel like I'm just so many things that I'm like, oh, that's good too, that I'm just like soaking in. But I feel like the biggest thing for me is kind of like seeing the flow of how to move sale and kind of like, okay, if it doesn't sell here, then do this. And then kind of like a walkthrough of how to move that. And I think a lot like MC was saying of like how to organize receiving. That was really helpful hearing from Tammy, like her process. And I feel like I work in similar ways. And so I was like, yes, I'm going to be borrowing that and using that same system. So that was really helpful. And I also was sitting here like, okay, on my day off, these are the things that I need to do. So sending things and running the damage report and all these different things, kind of creating a checklist for myself. So that was helpful.
Good stuff. And let me just encourage you, Tammy can be your consultant, Angela. So reach out and you guys can talk processes. She's got great processes. So, all right, well, let me wrap us up. There are a handful of topics I'm not going to cover. They're in the manual. It's bright and shiny and new, but let me just point out to you, we're not going to go into guest musician because most of you don't have one. We're not going to go into consignment because I'll have to tell you, I never remember. I have to look it up when somebody comes to me and wants to sell product. I look it up. We're not going to talk about at cost sales, so selling product at cost to camp staff. We're not going to talk about hiring. We're not going to talk about budgeting. You'll get to that in June or July. We're not going to talk about strategic planning. We're not going to talk about buying like group buys and pre-buys. But again, you can go to the manual when those topics come up. And we're not going to talk about logo. And so that's where I'm going to end today, is something to put on your task list. And this is how I run my task list. I have my do it now list, and then I have what I call a parking lot. If you are under the gun right now, I want you to put this in the parking lot to do when you can. But this is something I think is very valuable, is to read in your manual logo guideline standards. It's put out by the communications department. It's in the appendix of your manual. It tells you how the logo can be used. Again, it's not critical, but you as a retail manager should know and be a brand ambassador to know how to use the brand correctly. Again, for me, I think most of you want to put that in the parking lot because you've got some hot things coming your way. But one thing before our next session this afternoon is bring with you your concessions manual and your concessions CRG. We'll make reference to both of those in our call this afternoon, which is the main topic, all things concessions. So maybe grab a snack or a soda and be prepared to join us this afternoon, all things concessions. And then I'm going to pause recording